Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. I got a good one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with Leigh McClendon. Leigh is a little bit of a social media influencer, and I didn't actually peg him as a hunter when I first discovered him, and all sorts of people send me his hilarious videos. But then one day, I saw that he killed a deer, went in the comments, and a whole bunch of people were hollering, saying unfollow. Other people were saying, great job, man, great buck. So I was like, you know what, let me try and get this guy on the podcast. I bet he's got some amazing stories to tell, and Leigh did not disappoint. So I want to say thank you to Leigh, of course, for coming on the podcast. Couldn't have done it without him. Make sure you check him out. Links to everything are in the show notes, so you can check out his YouTube and his Instagram, etc. But beyond that, guys, thank you for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. If you have a story to tell, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, man, let's get this thing started. Let's let Leigh tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Leigh. Welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast, brother. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well, man. I'm doing real well. I want to thank you for being on the podcast, man. I'm very excited to have you. You're not our normal guest. You know, we have some of the people that hunt for a living, and then we have some listeners, but you're actually like a real social media influencer, like more so than most.
I don't know. I feel like I'm such a wild card when it comes to the internet. I like doing what I do. I like making goofy stuff, and then I'll pull deer hunting out of my back pocket, and people lose their minds. So I don't know where I fit. You know, it's like a test. If I've got 4 bubbled answers, I'm picking D, all the above.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's exactly why I reached out to you. I mean, I get sent your videos from my wife because you do some hilarious cat videos. We have a Maine Coon. We got one cat. He's massive and he's a pain in my ass, but your videos are basically exactly him. And then you do awesome videos. My parents were both teachers. I have kids. People send me your videos from like literally 5 different directions. And so I'm constantly getting them. And then all of a sudden I see this deer, on the ground. And I'm like, wait a minit.
Yeah.
Hold on. This guy just jumped up the list here. And then, of course, I clicked into the comments and I started seeing, people saying, hell yeah, here's a recipe for you. And then the other half are unfollow, screw this guy. So I'm like, well, okay, well, let him tell his story because I guarantee he can tell the good one.
Oh yeah, like half of the comments are it's like an airport. You know, everybody's got to announce that they're disappointed. I don't know. People are strange online.
Yep, I can almost guarantee someone on there said, "Why don't you just buy your meat from the grocery store like a regular person?"
Well,
right?
it's like okay, yeah. It's like how dare I choose to harvest my own meat that I eat, versus the pig that's been living in a small cage, being kind of I don't want to say tortured. I don't know how they go, but I mean,
yeah.
I'm
not living as good a life as the free range stuff for
exactly.
sure.
I mean, normally if you shoot a deer in the right spot, it doesn't take too long, So
Yep.
I don't know. It's a lot of people trying to give input on stuff they don't know anything about.
100%. And I took us down a weird path here at the beginning, but like, why don't we just start this thing off, Leigh, with letting you introduce yourself? Why don't you tell the people who you are, and like a little bit about your history as far as hunting? Like, when did you kick that off?
Yeah, so my name is Leigh McClendon. It's a strange name. I don't feel like anybody expects to find somebody named Leigh in the deer world. But I was introduced to hunting years ago when I was young, probably like early elementary. My stepdad would take us to run dogs. I don't know if you know what that is. Like where, well, you probably do. But around here, it used to be legal on government land, and he would get a lot of his friends. And they'd bring their kids and kind of set you up in spots, and they would try to do these deer drives where they would run the dogs to you. But me being so young, I didn't have any successful, kills during that time. I remember the first time I shot at deer was during this running of dogs. I had 2 does run out in front of me, probably no further than 40 yards, but we were using shotguns. Me being a dumb kid, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I put the BB on the deer or did I have to lead the shot into the deer. So I led the shot and I didn't hit any of the deer.
Yeah.
And then I think a couple of years later in middle school, I would spot hunt with him. He'd invite me to go hunt at our lease, government land. And, it got to where we didn't see a lot. But I remember in middle school, the reason I know the story so well is because I had braces in when I shot at this good buck, because all of a sudden he invited me to go hunting like right after Thanksgiving, and the first deer that walks out was this good 8 point, and I'd always wanted a big trophy deer. I'd fantasized about having a wall mounted deer,
Yeah.
but the gun we shot was not a gun that was sighted in, so I guess you can understand where that left off. Is none of
Yeah.
us hitting the deer. But when I shot, I had braces, and the gun hit me in the lip and pushed my braces into my skin. And I remember having to grab my lip and kind of tear it out of my braces. It
Oh
was
my
terrible.
goodness.
To make matters worse about missing that deer,
Was it
my
the
dad
butt
actually.
of the gun or the scope, or what was it specifically that popped
No,
you?
I think it
It's
was
just a
just
blur
kind
and
of
you have
like.
no idea.
Well, I was young, not very experienced at shooting guns. I think it was kind of like the side of the stock. Maybe I had my chin pushed too far up on it.
Gotcha.
But to make matters worse, not only did I miss the deer, my dad brought a shotgun just in case. And I remember after I shot that deer, ran out in the middle of the lane running, and he pulled up and shot. And he said, "All right, yeah, we got him." And I sat there and I was like, I remember every placement of where your BBs hit, and all of them were behind the deer. So, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings, and I was like, I think we both missed. But I mean, yeah, but I don't know. That's kind of where I started, and I think after that I took a long break until like my freshman year of college or my sophomore year of
Yeah, you know what?
college.
That's
I
funny. A
remember,
lot of a lot of hunters do that. Like high school, they are
yeah.
interested in sports and women, and like
Hmm.
there's a gap for for most male hunters, which is pretty
Yeah.
funny. Quick question
Well,
before we go into
yeah,
the college hunting.
go for it.
You said around here we can do dogs. Where's here?
Louisiana.
Okay,
You
very
can't
cool.
anymore. That was legal at the time. I think you can run dogs though on private land. I think. Don't quote me on that.
Okay,
But during that time, yeah, it was. They had certain days, I believe.
got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, back to college, man. So tell us what got you back into it. Like what fired it back up?
I don't know. I think my younger cousin got into it. He killed his first deer all of a sudden with a shotgun, and I was like, huh, maybe I should pick hunting back up. We've got some family land that nobody hunted, nobody did anything on, and we kind of all got into hunting together. We would put little feeders out because spading here is legal, and that seems to be something that a lot of people online don't realize. Because I've said, "Oh, I'm hunting." Like if I put on my Instagram story or something, people are like, "Oh, that's illegal." I'm like, "No, not everywhere. Some
Yeah,
places, yes."
yeah. We're not in
Um,
Colorado or in the
yeah.
South or all of the East, all over the
Oh
country,
yeah.
basically.
But I mean, I kind of I don't know. Something just switched, and I said, you know what? I wanna kill my first deer. I haven't gotten to do that. But it turned into a lot of sitting and not seeing anything. And I think that's what kind of caused me to stop hunting is because I really just thought, I guess all deer are just ghosts.
Yeah.
Because I would never see it. I'd see some, but they'd be so far, and as a kid, I would just try my best and shoot, 100 something yards when it's close to dark and not really knowing proper shooting etiquette and stuff. But I remember, this first year of really getting into it, eventually I walked down a trail and got into this ladder stand. And something about it, for some reason, seemed like I shouldn't be in that stand. And like it was an evening hunt. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to go back to this ground blind. So I
Yeah.
got out and got in the ground blind. And I guess, yeah, I didn't really understand how well deer use their noses to survive. Um,
Yeah.
as soon as I got in that ground blind, I heard my first ever doe blowing, at my scent. I'm assuming, and me not knowing that meant your hunt's probably, blown. No pun intended. I thought it was cool. I said, "Oh, the deer are here. There's deer here. I'm probably gonna kill one." And ironically, I did. Like right after that, and it was cool for me. It was
Yeah.
it was probably a a real small doe fawn. I saw an ear flicker and it came out, and I just pulled up and shot. I'd never got a chance to shoot a deer, and as soon as I saw it drop, it was. I might as well just shot a stray dog, man. It was not big, but I never shot a deer before, and I was always wanting to. And I just got up and I started doing the cha cha slide around it. I was so excited, and it was so small. I threw it over my shoulders.
Just walked out.
Yeah, well, I walked out and I got so excited. I said, "I'm going back." It's probably my that's I'm not going to see anything else, but I don't know. I didn't know a lot of hunting knowledge, but
Yeah.
I was super stoked, man.
Yeah, man, you got
Yeah.
to get on the board. You got to start somewhere, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's funny. It reminds me of so this past elk season, it was the I want to say it was the second night of elk season. And we go to this and I have a camera guy with me because I ended up going with two world elk calling champs.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Hey, can we video your hunt?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, you can video as long as you guys are calling for me. I don't care what you do." And I'm not sure if I tell this story on the recap episode or not, but we're going into this valley and we see some elk, and there's one bull and four cows, and I'm sneaking in, and it's like 600 yards or something like that, and I see at all times three of the cows and the bull. But I have no idea where one of these cows is. I'm like, well, I don't know, whatever. Let's just make a play, and it's a fine bull, nothing really to get too excited about. But I get in there with the cameraman on my back, across a swamp, basically like 400, 500 yards, and I'm like 70, 80 yards from this bull. And next thing I know, I look to my left, and there's a cow like 20 feet away, like just right there, and it goes up, and they bark rather than the the
Yeah.
whatever the whitetail noise is. But she runs off, crosses this little creek, jumps up to the side. But now she's upset that she's lost her pack, and she starts just barking. And so then they are over here, and they run into the trees, and they're barking. And all of a sudden, I've got elk in every direction of me, just barking. And I'm like, man, this is cool. Like just like you, like ignorance. I'm like, whatever, this is fun. I don't care. I've got 30 days to hunt if I have to, and just having that cool experience where you're hearing those noises for the first time because I'd never heard an elk bark before, and now
Yeah.
I'm literally in between a bunch of elk trying to get back together, but they're all like something's wrong, just barking back and forth.
Yeah.
It's just super cool, man. Ended up the bull got spooked by a moose of all damn things. It
People
was
kept
crazy.
saying y'all had moose in Colorado, and I didn't think y'all did, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah. When I was sitting here after, in the middle of this bark fest, it's a big field. It's like a mile and a half long and maybe, I don't know, 400 yards across, something like that. There were, at one point, I counted 15 elk and like four moose all in the field at the same time. It was the
Now,
craziest thing that's ever happened.
could you shoot moose out there?
If you have a tag, yeah.
Okay,
But
is
I did
that?
not have a tag. And that
I
whole
mean,
system is entirely different. Like in Colorado, you got over the counter where anybody can go
yeah.
up to the grocery store, just grab a tag, whether you're in state or out of state. There's a couple other details I'm skipping over for elk, but
So
it's
I could have.
different
Are
for the
you saying I
moose.
could have gone to Colorado like this year and bought an over the counter tag for an elk?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I didn't know that. I thought I was in Colorado Thanksgiving week, and for some reason everybody kept saying, "No, you have to draw for it." I didn't know I could just do that. Somebody said, "Yeah, you can do that with black bear," and I said, "I don't know the first thing about hunting black bear." So,
Yeah, no, you can. There's
mm,
Colorado has like I don't even know the number, but I want to say at least 100 over the counter units.
that's,
So
that's depressing, man.
the majority of the state is over the counter, and it's not quite as easy as just getting a tag, walking off into the woods and shooting something, but getting a
Hmm.
tag is that easy.
Okay.
Except for with moose, mountain goat, and sheep, where you have to get points for 3 years before you even have
Mm.
a chance. And then you have antelope. There's over the counter for antelope technically, and then deer for whatever reason, all draw. So
Mm.
there's like three different systems in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's all changing in the next couple of years.
Okay.
Of course,
Cool. Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, man, it's cool to have that whitetail, that doe experience. I've had the same thing with elk. I haven't had it with whitetail yet, but I'm not a very experienced whitetail hunter. I've got the one over my shoulder here.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what the guy I met. I met him at an outfitter place, and my uncle and dad invited me, and he was a real cool guy. His name was Tab. Shout out Tab. But I was curious. I was just like, yeah, why are you coming all the way to Missouri to hunt? I mean, besides it's on the Missouri Iowa border. Of course they've got giant deer out there, but he
yeah,
said where I live we don't have whitetail, and I said really? I'm not used to that. I'm used to it being the opposite way. We don't have everything, y'all have everything. So
yeah,
it's weird to know that there are people that have all these other animals and we have the one that they don't. I don't know.
yeah, right. Especially with whitetail being on most of the United States, like the entire East Coast.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I'm in Texas right now. If I were to walk into my backyard right now, I could probably see 15 deer, but I
What
can't
part
shoot
of
them.
Texas?
New Braunfels. I don't know how familiar you are with Texas. It's kind of in between San Antonio and Austin.
I was just in San Antonio not too long ago.
Cool, man. Yeah, there's a lot of good hunting around here, especially if you
Yeah,
go south of San Antonio to the Golden
yeah,
Triangle. That's where I got this guy.
that's
I
cool.
got him with a shotgun as well, and
Wow.
that's another crazy story. But I actually think this law was changed because of me. But you used to be able to hunt rivers. Rivers were
Uh,
public land in Texas, and
mm,
they still are, but they're no longer huntable when they used to be
yeah,
huntable. And I would just go in a river, dry riverbed, and I would hike until maybe I ran into something, and that's how I got that guy. So
that's pretty cool. Did you
yeah.
get that? Is that a bighorn sheep on your wall?
That is a bighorn sheep on my wall, but it is
That
not
is my
mine.
that's my one time. That's my one bucket list thing, and I guess I kind of feel like I'm never going to achieve that because it's everybody keeps saying no. That's pretty much a once in a lifetime hunt, and made me sad. I said like that's the one thing I would kill for, you know.
Man, I bet you can do it. They say I think when they say once in a lifetime, most places when you draw that tag and you're successful, you can't go in anymore. So it's not
Mm,
unrealistic to think that you can draw it, but once you've gotten it, you're done, and that's why they call it a once in a lifetime tag. So
okay.
yeah, man. We'll talk afterwards about some of the
Okay.
draw stuff, and I'll walk you through
Yeah,
some of them.
sure.
But this is my father-in-law's. He actually lived in Canada, Saskatchewan, and he passed away this past year. So I was like, I'll take it.
Oh, I'm sorry
Like
about that. Yeah.
they were about to throw it away, and I was like, no, no, I want
Oh yeah.
that. Like so,
Yeah.
and everyone asked me about it. Everyone's like, oh, you were on
Yeah.
a sheep hunt, and I'm like, no, no, I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
So, all
Yeah.
right, well, we went off topic, man. But all right, Leigh. What are the stories you got for us? I think we were kind of talking about what were you in college at this point, or do you have any
Yeah.
specific ones that you want to go over?
Oh, I mean, I can. My story's really not that elaborate, but I can start where I left off. So I basically killed that dog. What look, that's what people call small deer. And after that, it wasn't a couple weeks later. I was still into it. I was in college. You know, about I think an hour and a half away from where I was hunting. So like on my holiday breaks, I would go and hunt. And I killed a larger doe, and I was like, okay, we upgraded. We killed something pretty good. But I noticed something. I said, you know, I'm seeing a lot of does. Where are the bucks? I'm not seeing any of that. Um, and I started talking to my stepdad. You know, we kind of that's when me and him started hanging out as well. You know, I hang out with him all the time now, but now I'll go over and we'll talk deer hunting. But he gave me the advice. He said, if you ever get a chance, just watch the deer. You don't always have to shoot them. And I said, oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So the rest of that season, I said, I'm just going to watch deer and just see what they do, try to learn from them. And I think after that year was pretty slow. I didn't see much else, didn't kill anything else. And then the next year, um, I said I'm not killing a doe. I don't have an interest in that. I've already done it. Didn't seem too hard, and I sat out there all season long, just hoping to see anything with horns. And I remember one super cold morning. I had these two little like I guess they were nubbin bucks pop out, and they started rubbing their heads together, and a bigger deer popped out, and I thought it was a doe, but there was a branch above its head. And then they were all looking at me, I guess because I was so cold, I was making my ground blind shake. And
Been
it
there.
turned to get out of there, and I saw a flash of horns, and I threw up a shot, man. And I was still pretty inexperienced, but I was getting better. I was so sad. I said, "Man, I know I didn't hit that deer." And I walked down there to look for blood, and I stepped into the right of the woods where it ran. And I stepped back on the trail, and it was sitting there on the trail. So if I would have just set my ground blind, it might have come back out. But
Oh. So it wasn't wounded. It was just standing down the trail a little ways.
no, it was
That's
just
funny.
curious. I don't know. But I didn't hit it, and I think that was the year 2016. I can remember all my years, but I did not kill another deer until 2019. So from 2015 to 2019, that's like 4 years. I waited because I said I want to kill a buck. I
Yeah.
want to kill a bug, and I remember I kept learning about the rut, learning about when the times were for us, and that's normally around Thanksgiving week. And I think I sat out at our lease, and my dad said he said, you know, if you'll know, uh, one thing you learn from does and deer is watch what they do. If they look behind them, odds are there's something else with them. And I remember seeing a doe run by about 150 yards. She
Yeah.
ran, And then her fawn came out halfway and looked behind her. And I said, "Oh, she's doing that thing. She's doing that thing," he said. And as soon as it came out, I saw horns, and I pulled up and shot, and I saw the deer jump up and kick. And I started shaking. I got that. That was my first buck fever
Yeah.
moment. And it was another learning experience as well, because I should have just, instead of rushing the shot, I should have checked it out. But I think I get a pass because it being my first buck, it wasn't anything but like a 2-year-old 8 point, nothing fancy. But that's
Yeah.
not the point. I still enjoyed the moment, man. And it's all about the learning experiences with it. But
Yeah.
I think after
I love how you've been like teaching yourself. Like you were like, this is something I want to get back into, and you're just going through
yeah,
making mistakes, acknowledging the mistakes because we all do. I've done
yeah,
really stupid shit that
yeah.
some of it I've shared on the podcast, some of it I haven't. But man, that's awesome. I love hearing other hunters that don't necessarily have that same mentor that a lot of hunting people do. Man, I'm the same way. I've been
Yeah.
struggling through it for about 8 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and just starting to see success. So
Oh yeah. And then after that, I think the next year nothing happened. Our lease actually flooded. We had a beaver dam up a pond nearby, and we to get out to our stands, you had to wear waist high waders to get out there.
oh shit.
And that year was pretty slow, a lot of doe movement, and then the next year, this was the year it's like just a switch turned on, and now things changed. Don't know why, but it did. So we had a good 10 point. On camera, and we also that was a cool thing is we got into cameras, so it kind of
Yeah.
got you pumped. You would think no bucks were around because you didn't have cameras, but we had a good 10 point hanging around, and man, I would fantasize so much about seeing it. And I remember I was hunting hard, and nobody else was hunting out there, and then all of a sudden, I go to sit out there, and my uncle says, "Hey, I'm going to come hunt too," and we're not, but maybe 200 yards away, and right at dark, I hear a pow. And I just texted him. I said, "Did you get a buck?" He said, "Yeah, I had 3 of them chasing a doe." And I sat there like this. I said, I hate to say it, but I hope he killed a dink. And I walked out there, and he killed that 10 point, and I was so sad. I was like, man, I've been trying to kill a good buck for the wall for, I guess, like at that point, 7 years. I said,
Yeah, man.
I just wanted to harvest a mature deer, but uh, after that, I think it was 3 days later, I shot it was a bigger buck than my first one. It was
Okay.
about a 3-year-old deer, just not the best rack, but it was my biggest. And I threw it on the wall. I said, you know what? I'm happy about it. I feel like I earned it. Um, and then like a week later after that, my uncle kills a real good 8 point. And then at the end of the month of December, I killed a good 10 point. It was the weirdest time. We never had success like that. And it was just us going out there and hunting. But we got 4 good deer in 1 year.
That's awesome. How many
Yeah.
tags do you get in Louisiana when you buy a license?
Um, I don't want to say it wrong. I think you get. I'm probably going to mess it up. I think technically I can tagging out on bucks is you can kill 3 bucks.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know. It might be like 3 does. I could pull it up on my phone, but
I was just
I think
curious. Yeah, I'm thinking about like
yeah,
Texas. Texas, I think you get like upwards of like
y'all can kill
like 5 deer and like 2 mule deer and like all sorts
yeah,
of crazy stuff. You get a tag and they just like 15 animals are in trouble.
yeah. I just
Yeah.
got back from hunting in North Texas not too long ago, and I didn't know that. Like, if you kill a buck in one county, you have to go over to another county to kill one.
I think that might be on a county by county basis.
Okay.
But I don't know. I always, whenever I plan on hunting somewhere in Texas, I always call the game board and be like, "What do I need to know that I don't know?
Yeah.
What am I not asking about?"
Yeah.
And they usually fill you in, which is a
Yeah.
good habit to have for anywhere you hunt.
Yeah.
So
But anyway, the year is 2021. I killed 2 bucks, and I'm like, well, I guess technically I could try to tag out. But we didn't. We were pretty certain we didn't have any more good deer running around at the least for that year. But I said, you know what? I haven't hunted where I started in a while. Where I was hunting when I killed those 2 doe was on our family land, not at this lease that I hunted on. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go throw a camera up and just see. I think I had like 2 weeks of hunting left. And I threw out corn and put a feeder on it just to see if there was something. And lo and behold, there was a massive 10 point, super
no way.
wide. And I had 2 weeks to try to kill him. Um, and I'd sit out there in the freezing cold trying so hard. He was a massive deer, but didn't see him. Got a lot of pictures of him, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna see if he's there for next year. And then when the
Let him
next
go.
season came around, you could tell his tines kind of got a little shorter, but he turned from a 10 point to an 11 point.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I think it was October. Our season I think starts. I think archery season starts early October, but rifle season starts kind of late October. And I didn't do any archery hunting. I just didn't grow up that way. We just strictly rifle hunting. But I remember I would get pictures of them all the time. I was having a hog problem. But I thought these hogs ran him out. I didn't get pictures of them for like 2 weeks. And I said, well, I think the date was October 18th. No, it wasn't 18th. I don't know. It was super, super early in the season or something like that. I can't remember the date. But I said, you know what, I'm gonna just go sit and I'm gonna see if what these deer are doing to rut. No, it was November 14th, my bad.
Okay.
I said, you know what, our rut is during, in a week, 10 days, something like that. I'm just gonna go see what the deer are doing. And I think legal shooting hours were at 6:15 that morning. And at 6:18, I look, and about 50 yards away, I see a bigger silhouette of a deer, and it's just breaking daylight. You can't really see too well, but I mean, you can technically shoot. And this deer is just staring in my direction. It's not doing what you would think a doe would do, come out and walk around. It's just sitting still, just staring. And I started getting kind of nervous. I said, that's kind of creepy. It's not doing what you would think it
Yeah.
should do. And then it was on a lane, and it started walking down the lane, and it had its back facing to me. And I said, all right, I'm gonna scope it and just look at it. I'm sure it's just a big doe. And all of a sudden I just see this wide spread of horns. And I didn't have time to say holy crap. I just immediately said, he's about to walk on this right side, and the only shot I'm gonna have is he's gonna quarter. He's gonna quarter away. And I said, I just gotta shoot. And it happened so fast, man, but I shot and didn't nothing. It was just too dark still to see anything, but I heard him running and running and crashing through. I didn't know if it was like falling crashing. It just sounded like he was
Yeah. Just
breaking
knocking
through
branches
everything.
as he ran. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's,
Um.
oh, how'd you
And
feel at that moment, man? Like, that's the big deer you've been waiting for. You're like,
I
I don't
just,
really know what's going on. And then just, oh, shit. There
I,
he
I,
is.
I sat there, like 5, 3. I don't know how. I don't do math. 5 minutes after the shooting hours, and he comes out. But I just sat there and I said, I did the typical thing, text everybody that I've been telling about this deer. Hey, I just shot at him. I don't do that. I don't say I shot the deer. I tell them I shot at it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm missing
Yeah.
happens.
You're not
I
standing
don't want to
over
say,
it. So who knows?
I don't ever want to tell somebody I shot the deer. I mean, it was dark. How am I going to know for a fact I shot him right there? But anyway, I just told all my friends and stuff, hey, shot at the deer. And they're like, hey, I'd give him an hour. Just let the sun come up, give him an hour and go check. And I did. As soon as it was daylight, I kind of walked out there on the trail and tried to see if I could see any blood where I shot him. And I didn't. I was too afraid to step in the woods to where he ran. I just didn't want to be disappointed. I got that lump in my throat. I just said, I bet I missed this stupid thing. I was so
Oh,
sad. I said, I
I
bet I
hate that
messed
feeling,
up.
man.
But I
Hate that
took a
feeling.
couple steps in the woods and I see a big chunk of pink and red, and I was like, yeah. And I started following blood, and it kind of stopped for a minute. And I called my dad. I said, hey, do you mind coming out here to help me look? And we found more blood, and I was just looking around. I couldn't find nothing else. I just looked behind me, and my dad's sitting there with his phone up like this. He says, you see it? He was trying to get my reaction. I'm like, oh, where the heck is it? But
He saw it already. That's funny, man.
but we found the deer, and dude, I was on cloud nine. And that's actually him right here. It was I
Ugh.
think the taxidermist scored him at like 149. But
That's a
I
good
mean,
deer, bud. That's a real
I
good
mean,
deer.
around here, I mean, it's kind of unheard of. I know other people are like, that's nothing. I see 250-inch deer, just off the wall stuff. But apparently, I got so many messages saying, hey, man, I've been hunting that deer for, 6 years. And the taxidermist said he was 6 years old. So I said, that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
I don't think there will ever be a deer that I'm more proud of. And here's the ironic part is my grandma, since this was right behind my grandma's house, I'd always tell her, man, I'd like to kill a big deer behind your house. And that was the last hunting season I had with my grandma. And then she passed away. So
Oh man.
to me, that's just like a gift from God almost. So I thought it
Yeah, it
was
was
cool.
meant to be, man. That's
Oh
a
yeah,
super cool story. I mean, it's of course sad that your grandma passed away, and I'm sorry to hear that, man. But it is a beautiful story that like that's something you always wanted, and you snuck it in there, and it's a
yeah.
huge deer. The one behind me is the only whitetail I've ever shot, and he's like I think like 120 maybe. So
Yeah.
like another 20
It's
inches
got
of
an
antler.
interesting rack though.
Oh, dude, he's super weird. And he was, if I had to guess, I got him down in the Golden Triangle of South Texas, and I
Hmm.
think he was only like 3 years old.
He's still a good looking deer though. I don't the
Yeah.
whole age thing to me is if you like the deer, man, take it. There's so many
Yeah.
people that give people a hard time on what they harvest, and I don't ever want to get spoiled. To me, a good looking 120, 130 deer, I don't ever want to get to where I'm like, I don't know, I can't shoot it. To me, it still excites me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Texas public land. I didn't have access to any private, so I had
Hmm.
no other choice. I was gonna. It would have
Yeah.
been a spike. I would have been ecstatic,
Oh
just
yeah,
loving it.
absolutely.
So the
Well,
fact
that's a
that I got
good
a
first.
120, hell yeah, right? And
Yeah.
he's unique. He's got his both of his brow tines twist, and they have like a
Yeah.
whole bunch of other stuff going on.
Yeah.
One of them has like 3 extra points on it. It's
That's
it's
cool.
weird. It's weird
That's
deer.
super cool.
But man, that's a great story. That's a great story. What did your did you take the deer back to grandma's?
Oh yeah, I've got a picture. I definitely got it framed, but I got a picture to frame for my kitchen wall. I don't know if you can see that well, but
Oh yeah, no man, that's awesome.
yeah.
Look at her. She looks just as happy as you do.
Oh yeah, no, I had to pick her up and put her out there. She was kind of getting weak, and I said, no, you gotta give me this picture. So, but she wanted it too, so it was cool.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And what year was that?
That was 2022.
Okay.
So
Oh
last
man,
hunting season, yeah, not too long ago.
that's awesome. And then you've had a fair amount of success since then. Am I right?
Yeah, after that, that's when that's when hunting kind of seemed to get a little weird, not in a bad way, really interesting. Because shortly after I killed this one, my uncle, he's got a friend in Oklahoma where they've got a ranch where they try to really manage the deer over there.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I shot a 170 out here that I didn't hit and kill. But the catch was is that you can only use bows, and I had zero experience with it. And he said, "Hey man, if you want to try my crossbow, you can. You can come out here for a couple of days." So I did that, and I didn't know what to expect, but I had a blast out there. I remember the first morning just seeing so many does, and I thought, this is crazy cool. And they said it was the rut, but I hadn't seen anything. But I
Yeah.
remember the first morning out there, I saw a doe and I didn't think nothing of it. And I looked away, and then I saw in the reflection of the box blinds windows, I saw her looking at my stand. I said, I wonder what she's doing. And I kind of looked further into the reflection, and I see a big giant buck with her, and my heart starts pounding. I'm like, I don't know the first thing about shooting this crossbow, but she ended up trotting off, and he followed with her. And the only I didn't really shoot anything the first day, but I did kind of spend that time learning how to use my rangefinder and kind of how to judge distance because once again I had no experience with that. But after that, the next morning, it was slow, and the first deer I saw was this real big deer. I think my uncle he got him on camera. He said he probably scored at the time like 160, 160 inches.
Yeah.
But he just sat there kind of doing what my big deer did back home. He just sat there looking. He didn't move. It's kind of weird how those big bucks like to do that, just sit still and stare. But I guess that's why they're big.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but he came out about I don't want to get it wrong. I think maybe 65 yards. Some would say, yeah, you can shoot that with a crossbow. But my uncle was saying, I wouldn't go over 50. Me being a
Okay.
rifle hunter, he gave me broadside and stood still, and I said, I can't not let an arrow fly. I have to shoot.
Yeah.
But the only
Especially when you got a trigger, right? You got a
oh
trigger on the
yeah,
thing. You got to send it.
but the only bad thing about it, and it's definitely not good hunting moment on my end. That morning, I actually forgot to bring my rangefinder,
Okay.
but I had been sitting there the morning before, kind of scoping out little landmarks, and I'm like, okay, that's 30 yards, that's at 40, and I thought I had it right, but it was definitely a learning experience to make sure you don't forget that thing. It's pretty important when you're using
Oh yeah.
those. But I hit it. I hit the deer, but I believe we hit it kind of high because we found blood, but we gave him a couple of hours, but we tracked him for about 2,000 yards and found sparse blood, and um, just kind of came to the conclusion that he lived. But they actually got pictures of him this year, so he
Oh,
was
that's good.
still alive and kicking. So yeah,
Tough critters, man.
that's and I'm gonna talk myself out of breath. But that kind of wrapped up 2022. After that, I was pretty much done.
Yeah, man, I bet. I've had a similar moment, man, and I think all hunters do, where you're like, you just sort of get in the moment and you let something fly, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
bullet, an arrow, a bolt, whatever.
Oh yeah,
The first opportunity I ever had on an elk, I'm at like 40 yards on this bull, but he's laying down in front of a log, so I can't see anything except his head. And so I'm just hanging out and I'm waiting. My buddy comes in from another angle, and I've told this story before on my podcast, but he comes in at another angle, and my buddy doesn't even know what a wind checker is. So he's just crawling in, and the wind goes straight to. So I see 4 elk when I'm standing there waiting, just patiently, and
mm-hmm.
all within 40, 50 yards. But I don't have a shot on anything. And all of a sudden, 30 elk stand up on this hill, man, 30. And
Golly,
I'm like, holy shit. But I'm not at full draw. And they book it, and they run around me basically 90 degrees. And I'm like, I have a stationary pins on my bow. So I have like a
yeah,
20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And I'm like, all right, I'll put my 60 pin at the top of its back and I'll let it rip, because I was like, I want an elk. I've been trying so hard. I've
yeah,
years and years of hiking and running the mountains, and I let it rip. And as soon as I did, I was like, I have no idea how far that elk is. And thank God that arrow dropped like 30 yards in front of all of the elk.
yeah.
They were probably like 80 or 90 yards, and I just had no idea. But I just sent it, and as soon as I did, I was like, that was dumb. And never found my arrow because there was snow everywhere. It was just a ridiculous event, but it's just the
Yeah,
nature of the beast, man. You get into the moment,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you
for
think
sure.
and not everything stays, what it is when you're sitting there where there's no deer.
Well, there's the thing that hunting, you really have to get over your own impatience because if you've sat there, if you have 5 days to hunt in 4 days, you don't see much, you don't get many chances. That fifth day, you're pretty much a daredevil at that point. You're like, I'll shoot through the tree to get this deer. You start getting desperate, and if anybody says I don't get that way, you're a liar. No, I'm kidding.
Yep. I think you're kind of right. Yeah, I try my best to say, I'll shoot on day one what I'd shoot on the last day, but
Yeah.
you definitely get a lot more desperate as the days go, man.
Oh,
You
for
definitely
sure.
do.
Speaking of compound bows, that's actually my task for next year is I wanna go to a bow shop, kind of shoot a couple bows, see what I like, and try to get into it. I've been enjoying crossbows, but I mean it's one of those things. Yeah, you got to know the range, but it is kind of like shooting a rifle. But I'm not hating on it. I still enjoy it. But I feel like if I'm getting into hunting like I am, might as well make sure I hit the whole trifecta.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I switched from rifle and muzzleloader to archery only because I wanted to hunt in warmer weather. Like that's it. I was like,
Mm.
screw this cold shit. Like I want to. I'm tired of this. This sucks, especially
Yeah.
in Colorado. I remember my first Colorado hunt. The temperature didn't get above 20 degrees. Like warmest part of the day was 20, and I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I doing
Yeah.
this? Switched to archery and then just ended up falling in love with it, and it's
Hmm.
really fun. My recommendation to anyone listening and you, man, is 3D archery specifically. Don't just shoot at
Oh, okay.
paper. Shooting at
No.
paper, I found it super boring. And as soon as I discovered shooting at like foam animals, I was like, "Yep, this is my
Yeah.
personality now."
Yeah. I don't. It's not a bad personality to have, and I know it's not going to compare. But I would shoot. I used to work at a summer camp, and they had archery there, and of course, shooting kids' bows. You don't think anything of it, but
Yeah,
part of me feels like when I get into it, I'm probably not going to be too bad at it. So I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens with it.
Good, man. Good. That's exciting. Do you have any stories from 2023? Otherwise, I've taken up
Yeah,
plenty of your time, man. I mean, you
yeah.
tell me. I'm going to listen all night if you'll let me. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Oh, we can wrap it up at this year, this new year. This new year's been, I think, the most interesting, and I'm hoping that it only gets more interesting from here on out because just the experiences alone has been the coolest part. So this year is I've killed a deer in 4 different states this year, and that's
No
baffling to
shit.
me. I'm not used to that.
What
Um,
states?
so I hunted in Louisiana to start for a little while, and I don't know what it was. Just on all my cameras, and I know cameras don't always, exactly tell you if you have a
Yeah.
big deer around or not, because it seems like those big deer like to, they like to walk anywhere but in front of these cameras. Um, but back home when the season started, I didn't see much. I really did. I just wasn't seeing any does or anything. It was just so slow. But in October, my uncle and dad they invited me to go to this outfitters in Missouri, where we were only doing bow hunting. And we had 5 days to do it. Um, but when we went, it seemed kind of slow. We weren't seeing many, great deer running around, even though we knew there were plenty of them.
Yeah.
Um, but I think on the second evening of our 5 days, everybody was hunting in these like draws, these little open areas. And I said, do you have any creek bottoms? He said, yeah, we've got one called the gut shot stand. And I said, why is it called that? And I said, well, there's a story behind it. You can probably understand why. But I said, put me there because all I know is back home, all this hunting out in the open for me just doesn't make sense because what I've been told is deer like cover. So I said, put me in this gut shot stand. And I, I said, you know what? I'm not a big rattling guy. I'm not a big calling guy, but I'm going to try it out. I just brought a rattle bag out there and I think I had 2 does come by and then I had a spike about 130 yards. And I said, I'm going to try the rattle thing, see if he comes. And he sure did. He came and hung around and left, and I caught him again. He left, caught him a third time. He left, and I said, I'm going to try the fourth time. And when I did it the fourth time, I looked to my right, and I just saw this bigger deer making a rub on a tree, and he started coming my way with his ears back. And I said, oh, God, I've never seen that happen before. And
Yeah. He's fired up.
yeah, yeah, his tail kind of out, his head was down, and I didn't really get a chance to see if he was what he was. But his body was big. I said, but I mean, deer in Missouri are just so much different from what we have here. Um, but I ended up, I had to stand up to even get a shot and kind of turn my body. And as soon as he got to these trees, I said, you know what, I'm gonna hit him with that old fashioned that little stopping sound,
Yeah.
just so I can get a good look at him. But he did this stupid thing where when I did it, he didn't want to stop where I wanted him to. Instead, he wanted to put his head in the middle of a tree. So I only saw one side of the antlers, and I said, it looks good to me, and I shot him. So I ended up killing he was probably around 250 pounds, but it was a good looking 9 point.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, I'm gonna take him home and put him somewhere. I haven't gotten him back yet, but I felt proud of it, man. I decided where I wanted to sit just because of what I felt was right. And I
Yeah.
got to rattle in my first deer, and that was my first bow buck, my first crossbow buck. So I thought it was cool.
Oh, that's awesome,
Um,
man. And like going to an outfitter and be like, this is where I want to be. This is what makes sense to me.
yeah,
I'm like, you put the plan together. That feels good. Like I was saying, I went with 2 world champion elk callers, and
yeah.
the morning we killed my bull, I was like, here's what I'm thinking we should do, boys. And like these guys have so much more experience than me, but I'm just like trying to participate in, the
Yeah.
the strategy sessions, and it worked out. And I'm like, feel
The
pretty good about that. I
the
feel
only
pretty good
crummy
about it.
thing about it was they said if you want to go sit out for a doe, you can. And I started sleeping in. Everybody else was in the cold. I said I'm gonna sit in this bed. But I said on the fourth morning, I said I'll go sit out near my dad, and saw a pretty wide, big 10 point come out about 20 yards from me at daylight, and I said I would have liked to take that one, but it's one of those things where waiting can either pay off or it can't.
Yep.
But after that, my season kind of turned back to normal. I started hunting back at home, But then I got invited to jump on a podcast with Deer and Deer Hunting TV.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped on that, and the Dan Schmidt, the host of the show, he seemed to like me a lot, and he said, "Hey, we need to make sure we set up a hunt with him." And I said, "Oh, that's cool. That'd be really fun."
Hell yeah!
And they said they were trying to get some outfitters permissions to go out there and record a hunt with me, and it just didn't seem like they were getting much. I guess many offers. But I said, you know what, it's cool. They said, we'll just try to make it happen for next year. But the guy at the outfitter in Missouri kind of convinced me. He said, hey, if you want to come back for our rifle season, you can. And I kind of told that to the deer and deer hunting people. And they said, hey, if you do, we'll come record it. So that was kind of my answer. I said, I'm going back to Missouri, same place, because we knew they had some great deer out there. It's just you can't always connect with a bow. So I said, well, let's try to get a good one with a rifle. And I don't know, you just remember what I said. Sometimes shooting early is good, sometimes it's not. But anyway, we had our camera guy come out, and I was real worried. I said, man, I don't know if it's just going to be this rough and tough country deer hunter that's going to kind of judge me every move I make, But it wasn't. It was this younger guy that really didn't do a lot of hunting, so that was kind of funny. But super nice guy. And the first morning of our hunt, we had a pretty good wide 8-point come out, and I said, my Louisiana family land mindset came in. I said, I'm shooting this deer, and I put it in the scope, and I said, no. I told myself I was going to be patient. He's not a monster, but I said I'm going to be patient. I let him go. Didn't see much that day, and then the third morning, I think it was the morning or the evening, I was in that gut shot stand where I shot the 9-point. Yeah. And I started doing rattling again, and I had a big, heavy-bodied deer come out exactly where I shot the 9, and he just kind of stared at us. I really didn't know if he had a lot of branches above near his head, so I couldn't really make out what he was. But I would have had to shoot him left-handed if I would have shot him anyway. But looking back on the film, he looked like a good deer, but just not that monster I wanted to see if I could get. And now the fourth morning, we sat in another stand they called the Hooch. It didn't see much, but Ian, the camera guy, Ian said, hey, there's a doe right there. And all of a sudden, through the tall grass, you just see, the way I explained it is a huge capital U of horns hopping through the grass our way. And I just started panicking. I said, oh, it's him. That's the one we want. And it was in like a second, and he never showed himself again.
Oh, so, no.
He probably scored in the high 150s if we had to guess. But it was super cool to see. But they had an empty creek bottom right in front of us. And I guarantee he went down in there and hung out with her, because all you could smell is that really musky smell. But then after that, it was day 5, and it turned into that situation. It's like, maybe we should have shot one of these early deer. But that day 5 morning, didn't see nothing. And Bruce, the guy there, he texted us saying, hey, man, from the lodge, I saw there was a good-looking buck bed down with a doe south of you guys. Yeah. And he said, if y'all want, I can just come pick you up, but I think it'll scare the deer off. If y'all want to try to stalk up on it, you can. And I said, piss on that. It's the last morning. Let's try it out. And we kind of snuck up, and I didn't see it. And we got, I think, 150 yards from it. And all of a sudden, I see the doe jump up and run. And I said, oh, God, there's the buck. And he was a good 8. He was real tall. And he was running, and I put my scope on him and shot him running. So
no way.
And we had been joking all week, saying, watch me have to shoot a running deer. And I shot him and hit him. So I was super stoked about that.
That's awesome. And did he just drop right there, or did you have a little bit of a tracking job?
He flipped right there. I think I shot maybe a little high up on his spine, but I definitely had to put another one in him. Nobody likes to do that. I mean, but
that's the right thing to do.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. So that was 2 in Missouri and 1 in Louisiana.
Well, I didn't kill one in Louisiana yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I can keep going, though. So I did another podcast with some people. There was a YouTube channel called The Element, and the show Meat Eater actually bought their business. So now they record YouTube hunts for Meat Eater. and they wanted me to do their podcast. And then they did the same thing. They said, "Hey, do you want to hunt in North Texas?" And I said, "Yeah, I do."
I mean, if I have to.
So we hunted, and they didn't really have a lot of monsters on camera. They had one good 9 point that the guy who invited me, he actually ended up shooting the last evening. But that was such a cool experience to me because it kind of just threw everything I learned out the window, because that place is just so open with cedar trees placed around, and you're just like, how do deer get around here? How do they eat? What do they eat?
Yeah.
But it seemed like the only thing they would plant for food plots was like wheat fields. So it was so cool to just be able to hunt two different states and see how that goes. But I think our third afternoon, we were sitting in this box blind, and we could see these kind of does bedded down in this thin layer of cedars. And then all of a sudden, I said, "Hey," I told my camera guy, I can't say the word, camera guy, Greg, I see the butt of a deer, and he put his binos on it and said, "Hey, that's a good looking deer. That's a good deer." And he said, "Okay." I checked it out myself, and I said, "It's not a bad looking deer." I know they said in North Texas they really don't get, at 3 years old, they really don't get huge.
Yeah.
But
South Texas is where they are crazy, and
Yeah.
also like 75 points of just weirdness, and they breed them
Yeah.
funny. It's a weird
I would
place.
love to kill a South Texas deer. I think the ones that get that dark horn, I'd love to kill. I don't know. There's something about a Texas deer. They get these sandy colored horns, and I think it's super cool.
Yeah.
But we were rifle hunting this time, and that deer was about 300 yards. And I said, "Well, that feeder's going to go off soon. I'm going to pull the trigger at 300 yards." He said, "Well, if you feel comfortable, you can try it." I said, "I've never had to shoot that far." But
had you ever practiced at that distance?
No, this was the first time ever. But I mean, we kind of talked about it. We were like, I mean, this is going to sound nerdy. I used to play a bunch of shooting video games, and I said, I know that when you shoot farther, you have to shoot a little higher. And we both had kind of agreed to shoot a little above his back. And when I shot him, he donkey kicked. So I said, "Okay, I hit him." But we looked at the video, and it looked low. But he kind of ran behind a cedar and gave us his back, and the camera guy said, "Shoot him again." I did. He said, "Shoot him again." Shot him again. And then we kind of wrapped. After that, we decided to wrap around the heels and see if we could get above him, just to make sure he was, dead. And it turns out the first shot was lethal. It shot low, but it's like it ricocheted off the ribs or something, and it double lunged him and came out perfectly in the middle on the other side. Super weird. But he was a good looking younger 7 point, and that's what I was going to say. You've got a Euro Texas buck there, and that's what I'm doing to mine is Euro Mountain Mine.
Man. Hell yeah, that's awesome, man. That's cool. I feel like I owe you a hunt now that you've been on my podcast. I'll work on that. All right, man.
Don't feel obligated, but I won't turn it down. I promise you.
I know you won't. I think I can outdo Whitetail. I got a buddy with an Aoudad Ranch. Maybe I can talk him into it. I know he listens. So John,
cool.
Let's get Leigh out there, man. But I don't know if you're familiar with Aoudad, man. They're super cool.
Yeah.
Barbary sheep from Afghanistan. They got this long chest mane. Super.
That'd be cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, I'm down for anything. And then I've got one more story, and then I'll be done.
Okay.
Shortly after that, my uncle invites me back to Oklahoma, and the first morning out there, I saw a good-looking 8 and a coal 7, but I didn't shoot anything that first morning, and so I think the third night I didn't really see much. You'd see a lot of does and young bucks, but the third night he said, "Hey, if you see this younger sticks, shoot it. We don't want him breeding and stuff." I don't know what I believe in culling, but hey, they told me to shoot it, so I did. So I shot that one, and when my uncle came to pick me up, he said, "I killed the tall 8." So he killed a good looking 8 point. So it was kind of cool to be able to share that moment of kind of doubling up. So the last morning we were there, he said, "Hey, you can go hunt if you want. I'm gonna sit here and clean up for his friend that owns the place." And I said, "Cool." And I was out there, and as soon as daybreak happens, about 20 yards in front of me, I'm sitting kind of at an angle, but when I sat there before and had all these good-looking bucks come out, they came straight. But it happened in 4 seconds. I just see a giant crown of white pass through about 20 yards from me. And my heart, in 4 seconds, my heart was beating out my chest. And I said that it was one of those no questions asked. That was a good deer. I think he probably scored. My uncle, after I told him about it, he said, "Was it this deer?" And he showed me a picture, and I said, that looks like the deer. um, but he said, "Yeah, that deer scored probably like mid 160s." And I said, I would have liked to take that deer home. He was like a real thick horned 10 point, just real tall, real wide, just real pretty. It's one of those things to where it's like, instead of sitting angled to the left, I wish I would have been sitting angled to the right, because I would have been able to see him coming and had a shot. But he didn't walk slow. He was power walking through, and that's how my year has gone so far. And then I came back, and my stepdad needed meat, and I went to the lease and shot him a small doe, and that's how I got my fourth deer for the fourth state. But
that's a damn good year, man. That's a good year.
I still don't consider it over. The season's still here. I can still rifle hunt and everything. And I actually, I'm taking my fiance hunting for the first time this Friday. So I went out today and kind of threw out corn and stuff and cleaned up some stuff, and see if I can't get her to see some deer.
That's cool, man. Does she have any hunting background, or anyone else in her family? No,
not at all.
My wife's father did, and her brother does, but like she's got no interest. I'm trying to get her somehow excited, especially because like we got deer all over our yard. The main reason I can't shoot them is she says I can't shoot them.
Oh no, and that's the cool thing. She's like, "Oh, you should try to kill one of these and stuff." So I think it's cool that she's all for it, and she also has a son that's 7. So I think after I take her, he's got to be next. So maybe awesome, I can start his deer hunting journey, I guess.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Pass it on to the next generation. Teach them all the stuff that you've been teaching yourself. That's I've said this 100 times on the podcast. I know that I'm always going to be a mediocre hunter, but I hope to learn enough to make my son a pretty damn good hunter.
Yeah, I agree. I tell people all the time, when it comes to hunting, I'm never going to sit there and play like I know best, because as I've grown, I've learned some. And then some of these people I've asked for advice, I've heard them give some terrible advice. When I started learning, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be like that. I want to meet people that I trust, that I'm like, yeah, they've got a good resume. I can believe what they say, and just compile up a lot of knowledge I get from people, and go from there and spread it out.
For sure, man. I think you mentioned some advice that you got from someone. I don't remember who gave it to you. It might have been your maybe your stepdad, but it was, hey, just go out there and watch the deer. And like just watching the animals, you'll learn so much about them. Now that I have all these deer running on my yard with no intent in shooting them, I'm starting to pay attention to like what they're doing different times of the year. And granted, I don't get much whitetail hunting in my life, but like I feel like living where I live right now, I'm a better whitetail hunter than before. So just watching the animals is some great advice.
And another piece of good advice he gave me that I'm sure he heard from a TV show: can't kill them on the couch. So that's the best one. Can't kill them from home.
That's right.
Sometimes it's just flat out right place, right time.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, Leigh, man, this was fun. I appreciate you taking some time to share your stories with us. Hopefully, you got another 4 years worth of stories next year. We're going to have you back, man.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. I hope so.
Well, let's do this. Let's tell the people where they can find you, so they can see some of your amazing, hilarious videos.
Weird
Most
stuff.
of them aren't hunting stuff, but yeah, no, they're weird. They're super weird. You do a surprisingly good like 8-year-old girl impression.
I don't know, man. I've got that. I don't know. Some people say I've got that dog in me. I've got that weird in me.
That's good. But I like to surround myself by weird people. It's more entertaining than normal boring people. So
I don't know. I believe it or not, I used to do deer hunting skits when I first started making videos.
Oh yeah.
But I just did it. Well, I'm starting to think, if I'm getting all these hunting show times, because the one in Texas was recorded, Missouri was recorded, and I'm actually going in February on an alligator hunt with a guy named Blaine Anthony. He has a show called Bear Whisperer.
Cool.
So if if hunting seems to becoming a second job, I might as well bring hunting skits back. But they can find all my weirdness on any platform at Leigh McNasty. It's LEIGH_McNasty.
There you go. And I'll put a link to it, of course, in the show notes, man. But thank you.
Okay.
This was a lot of fun. Again, I appreciate your time. I know I kicked the can down the road one time on you, so I appreciate you being patient.
Oh, it's okay. No, I understand life happens, but no, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and who knows? Maybe I'll find a hunt for us to go on here shortly.
I don't have a life anymore, and hunting normally trumps everything.
Yes, sir. Yep. Other than family, it's right there. So, all right, Leigh. Well, thank you, man. Thank you again. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, man. We'll stay in touch.
All right, sounds good.
All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. I want to thank Leigh again for coming on the podcast. It was really fun getting to talk with him. Hopefully we get to hunt together sometime in the future. But beyond that, guys, please check out the show notes. Go check out what Leigh's throwing down. It's some pretty funny content, especially if you're a parent, a teacher, or like cats or whatever it might be. He's got all sorts of stuff, and hopefully he starts doing more hunting-related content as well. Beyond that, guys, I said it earlier, but if you have a story, if you know anyone who has a crazy story, reach out to me. I'd love to have you on as a guest. And then, of course, get out there and make sure you review the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether that is Spotify, Apple, or, of course, Carbon TV, which we are now streaming on every week. In fact, slowly uploading all of our episodes. But that's it, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Now get out there and make some stories of your own.